Welcome. It is Sunday, March 8th. And quick disclaimer while we wait for people to get here. Thank you to the 3 people that were waiting. That being said, I'm not a medical professional. Nothing I say is intended as health advice. Any major changes you make to your diet or any other aspects of your lifestyle is something you should check with a doctor with for enacting your own life. Furthermore, I'm not a financial advisor. Nothing I say is a recommendation for investment. I'm also a law-abiding citizen. Nothing I say is an admission of guilt. And lastly, but not leastly, all opinions are my own. They're in no way affiliated with Google, YouTube, or any other network you may be viewing this on in the future. That being said, welcome to our Sunday service. What is happening, you guys? Brenda, thank you for being our first chatter. Let's see, we'll give it a little minute to get going here. I am in Miami. That's something new. I'm enjoying it immensely. It's been a great change. The weather is pretty much perfect right now. And yeah, here we are. So, I didn't really pick out any topics today, but I'm sure people will come in and ask some questions here before too long. What's going on, Brenda? How are you doing? Guess I should. All right, looks like we're starting to get a couple people here. How's the connection, you guys? Audio good? Connection smooth? Curious, what does the 888 represent? It's just because it was like the 3rd month, the 8th day, and I just kind of decided to add in some 8s on the title. It's always a tentative title when I do these Q&A streams. So I was just leaving it there in case I forget to change the title, so I remember what day it was when I see it. But yeah, I always usually end up changing the title to something more specific to whatever we talked about. But since I don't plan the topics, and this is a viewer-led discussion where I'm just answering questions, I usually just write whatever. All right, we got some traffic going on. Here we are, 33 people. Nice. All right, I'm gonna do some greetings while we wait for some questions. If anyone's got some questions or wants to kick off the discussion, feel free to drop them in the chat. Benito, good to see you, brother. Tony, good to see you as well. I'm happy you're here. Dreaming for Northern Lights, hello and good evening. Good to see you, Mihail. Glad the stream is smooth. Noi, thank you for being here to mod for me. Always good to see you. So yeah, this is an open chat today. We'll see how that goes. It's always a little bit, Max wants to know about the hair. The hair is getting a little bit untangled. I've been kind of, working on making it a little more, a little easier to digest for the, the common people out here in the world. But yeah, we're seeing. Okay, you guys, the app crashed, which is always a really bad sign this early on, especially when I have a really strong connection, which I do. But yeah, anyways, hopefully that doesn't end up being a persisting problem. Any interesting progress? Noy asked. And I got some things cooking as far as life changes. I'm currently haven't had any solid food for a few days now. I am sipping a watermelon juice right now, which will be my only sustenance today. And but yeah, this will be all I consume today. I'm working on this this thing. Am I wearing a filter? No, I'm not wearing a filter. This is my real eyebrows. Max says, I'm aiming to lose a lot of weight, including muscle, with an extended juice fast. So that's good. That can be definitely good, depending on what your current situation is. You got to be a little careful. I've been gaining weight lately to prepare for a longer dry fast. I also want to notate to the people out there that have been fasting this month or just fasting in general that if you did want to conserve muscle through your fast, dry fasting does tend to be more conservative of muscle than water fasting or juice fasting. But if you are just looking to, when it comes to juice fasting, since depending what kind of juice that you're using, it tends to be more aimed, of course it can be quite low on calories and you can lose a lot of weight like that, but it's also, it's really more geared towards cleansing the digestive tract even, especially if you focus on like low fiber juices like watermelon juice. That being said, water fasting would also is quite more of a metabolic fast, right? Where you're focusing on, autophagy and ketosis, and dry fasting is all the above plus some serious spiritual implications. So there's a fast for every goal, but it is, in my opinion, a important aspect of life in general and longevity. One second, Tony, I'm coming back to your question, but first I gotta answer the red horsemen before I block them and confirm that Neanderthals do still exist, though apparently originality does not, since we have indeed heard this one before a couple of times. But we do wish you the best, and we are sorry about the issues with your upbringing, and we do encourage you to try spreading love and kindness rather than judgment on random people on the internet going forward into the future, Mr. Red Horseman. Have a good day. Now back to Tony, who actually has a meaningful thing to say. Tony says, is a person able to continue living in the spiritual world without connecting with the sensory world for a long period? What are the obstacles that might break this connection? And how can a person sharpen their senses in this state of becoming? Yes, it is certainly possible to continue living in the spiritual world without connecting with the sensory world for a long period of time. In fact, this is what I think many of the most advanced spiritualists do end up doing. Personally, and I always try to speak personally because, we all have our own specific goals and values and virtues and things that we, strengths and weaknesses, so on and so forth. But I think a good ratio as far as living in the spiritual world to participating in the physical world is in my own vision, like a 2-to-1 ratio, or should I say 2/3 in the spiritual world, 1/3 in the physical world. And I suppose there is quite a bit of art to that, but that would be what one calls the spiritual path. Or a simple way of putting it is everything in moderation, even moderation, right? So we can apply that to our spiritual practices as well. And if we keep like a 2/3 spiritual to 1/3 physical ratio, I find that one is able to, without too much of a challenge, keep that vibe, on that level while interacting in the physical world, and that your interactions within the physical world will actually be very acute, to the point that that 1/3 of your time that you're spending there will accomplish more than whatever you would accomplish spending 100% of your time focusing on the physical world, because your power manifestation and your ability to embrace the Wu Wei will be maximized. But that's just my own personal way of going about it and what I'm trying to do. And as far as how can a person sharpen their senses in the state of becoming, I suppose I wish I had a more elaborate and extensive answer for this, but I'm going to go with the simple route and say meditation is clearly the catalyst for this, and that if you are encountering any issues with meditation, it's difficult for you, or maybe you're lacking you're living somewhere where you don't have like a lot of silence, and maybe you have a lot of responsibilities, something like that, then fasting is again a really strong tool in this regard, because after only a single day of dry fasting, I personally find it to be much easier to enter a deep meditative state. So we can definitely expand on that, though, if you would like to continue, and if that wasn't a good, a comprehensive enough answer. But I love that question. I think it's really good. And And it's actually something I've been thinking about a lot lately. So it's perfect. Let's see. Mihail says, you talk about spiritual transformation a lot. What moment in your life first pushed you towards that path? That's a really good question, and it's a debatable one. So, you know, when we talk about spiritual transformation, you know, there's kind of multiple levels to it. So one of those levels is to become conscious, right? This is the moment, and to have become awake, right? Now, sometimes this happens consciously, sometimes this happens fairly unconsciously, right? But consciousness extends to all things. So on some level, we are always conscious of what's happening, even if we don't have clarity on it. Or should I say, awareness of what is happening, right? But then suddenly one day something happens and awareness strikes. Suddenly you become aware of what is happening, right? And then there's another step, going a step further beyond that, where we can become consciously aware that we are aware. Or should we say, consciously aware that we are conscious. And depending how you want to look at it. And so I often ask myself when it actually started, if indeed it did not start from the very beginning, which it may have. But there was a moment back in September 2023 when I crossed that threshold of becoming consciously aware, right? And there was plenty of phenomenal signs and things that I probably could have picked up on way before that. But I myself, and I think many humans, have this similar issue, is that we have been trained to rationalize away things which we don't understand, or and if I would go farther and farther back into the stages which I was not quite sure of what was happening, I could say that my life did take a sudden shift at some point, probably in 2016, when I was struck by lightning. And while, you know, I'm sure there are natural events where one is struck by lightning, what happened in my personal experience was definitely something that could have raised a lot of questions within me, except for I wasn't feeling very well after being struck by lightning. Then fast forward a few years later to slightly before the pandemic, and I mean very, very slightly, it could have had something to do with it. I fell ill. And through the pandemic, I learned a lot about some of the power structures within our civilization and society and banking and whatnot through the financial system. And that brought me some type of elucidation regarding the facade that is hiding the truth of society and whatnot, right? So that probably was a fairly significant event as well towards that. Started moving me in a different direction of thought, right? But if I would pinpoint an exact moment when I would say the curtain was pulled up the curtain was fully pulled up, and I realized that there was a lot more going on with the world, and that the metaphysical or the spiritual, or however you want to think about it, was a major deciding factor, was when I was in Mexico, and after 2 years of illness, somebody was able to heal me using just energy, right? And that was definitely the moment that I realized there was more going on. Now, there was another moment involving a blunt, for those who know what I'm talking about, but we won't talk about that, which I probably could have figured it out, as well. But nonetheless, I was still quite far off at that time. The story is one that I've told dozens of times, if not more, on this stream, but the initial trigger for that transformation for me was chanting the Om. And no doubt I had already been doing a lot of spiritual footwork prior to that, but without being consciously aware of it, because I was more focusing on my mental health and my physical health, and the combination thereof led me to do things which are very powerful when it comes to spiritual transformation. And those things are things like fasting, releasing myself from even the most minor addictions like cannabis and caffeine, by releasing myself from a toxic relationship, by releasing attachment to worldly possessions, in preparation to exit that toxic relationship. There was a lot of things, but again, sometimes we just want to better ourselves, and we intuitively start moving in a different direction, and that direction is usually, if it's improving our life, towards God, for lack of a better word. And in doing that, and simply wanting better and trying to live virtuously, even though people could argue that, someone with my background is not necessarily classically virtuous. But there was, in many ways, in many aspects of my persona and the way that I lived and so on and so forth, which I feel were much heavier factors than the product that I was creating. And so, to round it out in the same way that I started it, any betterment, any push to better yourself really is the most truest north towards spiritual transformation, whether or not you are consciously aware of it. However, there is certainly a moment which I believe anyone who embraces that wholeheartedly will eventually go through, be it sooner or later, when they do become consciously aware. And that will be something quite magnificent and life-changing. And the story is there if you want to go browse through my past content. But you could also just, try to work in a methodical way towards bettering oneself, and the surprise is quite intense, and sometimes it's better to be surprised. It's also sometimes better to just let things unfold naturally rather than to create an image in your mind about what something might be like or what might happen based upon another person's experiences, be that person myself, or be that person like a famous historical religious figure of some sort, which many religions have been based upon. Because the spiritual path and the spiritual unfolding is a very personal thing. And that might sound strange coming from someone who has shared a large portion of the more intense experiences I've had with it to the greater internet. But there's also a point in which I think a person comes to on the spiritual path where the only way to continue learning, or one of the most powerful ways to continue learning is actually through teaching. Because there truly is, part of becoming consciously aware is the awakening of the inner guru, where something changes in yourself, which allows you to tap into some type of universal wisdom, which cannot truly be understood through learning in any way outside of your own experience. So I hope that wasn't too wordy, and that maybe it was like somewhat comprehensible, but I hope that answered your question in some way, shape, or form. Thank you for the great question, by the way, Mihail. Oh, and we got another one. Mihaela says, can someone truly become spiritual while still deeply enjoying the physical world? Yes. In fact, that is one of the fastest routes to spiritual elucidation, right? But to go through that path is not easy. It's fast, but it's not easy. And that path is the path of non-dual thought, right? This is, what they call the left-hand path. This is someone that immerses themselves wholeheartedly and completely within the physical world, right? It's also something commonly referred to in certain practices as Tantra, right? And what Tantra is, be it, white Tantra or red Tantra, or whatever kind of Tantra that you want to refer to, to be like, it's all based upon non-duality, right? So it starts with the ability to see past the dualistic nature of the world, right? And this is also what happens even in the more popularized sexual type Tantra, is really the merging of the masculine and feminine. But this can also happen inside you, not just like physically with another person, but yeah, it's the path of non-duality. It's, you know, it's the acceptance that all things exist to create contrast within the dualistic world. As soon as beauty becomes apparent, ugly simultaneously becomes apparent, right? You know what I'm saying? Bad is defined by good, right? If we remove the bad, then now the lesser of the good becomes the new bad. So there can never exist one without the other, right? Dirty is defined by cleaned. Light is defined by dark, right? The absence of one negates the existence of another, right? So to fully understand that concept and to move past it, that is, in my view, the heart and soul and the basis, the cornerstone of Tantra, right? Or embodiment, one might say. And that is definitely a path to the spiritual world. You know what I'm saying? Some refer to that as the left-hand path, right? They refer to that as the left-hand path because the left hand is the hand that you historically wiped your ass with. It's to realize that there's no difference between the dirty and the clean, right? Versus the right-hand path, the more common path towards spirituality, is the path of the renunciate, the one that detaches from all things physical, that renounces worldly pleasures and so on and so forth in favor of the divine principle, right? And that will take you there as well. But going back to what Tony was talking about earlier, there's also a central path, right? Where one can seamlessly move between one and the other. Now, this is the hardest path. It might sound like the most obvious path, but it's incredibly difficult. It's also very rewarding. And among these paths, you know what I'm saying, there is, you know, many methods of transporting yourself. But all roads lead to Rome, as they say. So, you know, it's just a matter of knowing oneself, right? So, through knowing oneself, one can realize that all of these paths are the path to the center, right? They all lead to the higher self. And to know oneself is to see the way, the universal way, right? And whether you're going left-hand path, the right-hand path, the middle path, whatever path you want to take there, you know, moving with virtue is the fastest way to travel on any of those paths, right? Because you know, because that's the hardest thing, right? So, anyways, that's my perspective. Anyways, let me go back to the chat before I start. Am I at an airport? No, I'm not at an airport. Inspiration Melody says, we learn from our human experience at all levels. And that's true. The scope of perception is vast, right? And no two experiences are ever the same, right? And I think that one of the most unfortunate things which some religions and things have imbued within people's minds is like this concept of like heaven and hell. Whereas what I see, or should I even go to as far as to say that I know without any shred of a doubt, is the truth of reincarnation and karma, right? And understanding that is probably one of the most basic fundamental things which moves us in a direction towards spiritual liberation, which, whether it happens in this life or another life, moving towards that is equally as important, even if you're not going to achieve it in this life. Not to say that you won't, but the discharge of karma really is the greatest goal. It's the name of the game that we came to play, Let's see what I got here. It only says, sending love from Japan. I don't understand English. Just kidding. I do understand English, and I'm not Japanese. Okay. Well. No, it says in English, please. Thank you. I agree. How do you work on giving up attachments? It's pretty easy when you realize how much better life is without it. You know what I'm saying? Like, just a simple fundamental law, like a fundamental truth that is completely and totally unavoidable. And someone can argue with me on this if they want, but it would be stupid. Because there is no lasting happiness when you have attachments, right? All attachment, all desire leads to suffering, right? This is simply a truth of samsara. This is a truth of life, right? And, detachment does not mean that you own nothing. Detachment means that nothing owns you, right? It's the moment that you place value on something outside of yourself, you have already set yourself up for a fall. You have placed your happiness in something, or your security, or whatever it is, whatever you put, even if it's your livelihood, whatever it is. The moment that you place your security, your happiness, your contentment, your peace, your love, your enlightenment, in something outside of yourself, you have given up control over your own state of being, over your own mind, right? And so, to simply understand this as not like philosophy or anything, but as a law of nature, right? Suddenly it becomes very easy to give up attachments, and through my own experience and trial and error of being a very, should I say, of being a glutton for punishment in my own way. I have repeatedly tested this over and over and over again, and I will tell you that I understand this as just as much of a law as gravity or cause and effect, or you know. Anything. It's like, it's the truest thing that we can really, one of the truest things that we can say is that desire leads to suffering. And, you know, any happiness that we gain through attachment to worldly things is temporary. And the suffering that eventually comes from that is always proportionate to that happiness, right? So, there's nothing which can really be said against detachment, you know, that will remain true over the long term, to put it as simply as possible. Or should I call it nita or impermanence? Yeah, I mean, I think that I hope that I answered that in some way. Do you see the attachment more as a padana, clinging, or as a tana, craving? Well, attachment essentially embodies all of the sins, you know. I don't see it as more or less of anything. I see it as all of them. Every sin, or no matter what way that you want to look at it. And I say sin loosely as just, it's a way that I like to look at things. It's like the seven sins, the seven virtues, the seven chakras, like they all line up, right? And, you know, you could take it a step further. You know, when we're talking about spirituality, like the Buddhists have a good way of putting it, like the 10 fetters, you know, and they include a couple extra things because it's focused on spirituality. And, you know, there are attachments that only arise upon attaining a certain level of connection with the divine, you know, that where one starts craving things like enlightenment, or non-material existence, so on and so forth. You know, I have no doubt that there's an extensive, you know, ways that other practices, yoga and pretty much any religion probably have of putting it as well. But ultimately, if I was going to bunch in all negative attributes, all the fetters, all the sins, all the, you know, all the things that keep us trapped, I would say that it all comes down to attachment or desire. See, Nectar Stroke says, I feel like a lot of us fear this way of thinking because we were told that embracing the secular world is seen as villainous. Well, yeah, totally. But the thing is like, you know, that's kind of what I was saying earlier, like it's a big step in the right direction to start seeing through the actual power structures of society, right? And then the natural next step after that is to understand that there's a way to, you know, there's a master key to break out of that matrix or whatever and start living as a liberated person. And that's through spirituality. It's through the release of desires, the release of attachments, and through the release of suffering, right? And this is always through some spiritual method of one way or another. There's not really any other way, right? And another way to put it is, you know, think about it like this, right? And this will hit home for the people who really are in the, you know, mundane world of, you know, thinking about worldly things as their goals and aspirations and whatnot, right? It's like, imagine like a stock, right? Why is it more dangerous to short a stock than to buy an equity, right? Or buy a stock, right? Well, because when you short something, you're taking a loan against it. But that stock, right, that you received cash for, that you shorted, can go up indefinitely. There is no ceiling to how much something can become worth. So what you end up owing can become far, far, far greater than what you received, you know what I'm saying? And when we say far, far greater, we mean infinitely greater, right? Now, on the reverse side, when you buy an equity, right, the most that you can lose is 100%. Sorry, I don't mean to change my tone, but this is just when I start talking about this, I naturally fall into a sardonic attitude. But, so this is the same thing that happens, you know, in worldly affairs, whether it be with money or status or, you know, the accumulation of possessions, physical things, and so on and so forth, right? There is no cap. No matter how much you obtain, you eventually want more. You will want more. You'll have to keep going more. And in fact, it's really just a bigger chain on your ankle, right? By the powers that be. Because they have more to take away from you, right? All the way up to, like, you know what I mean? Like, let's not even, whatever, I'm not gonna name names or whatever, but just imagine metaphorically that, you know, one person's organization or family or company, whatever, has even, like, you know, access to, let's say, $1 trillion. But then what if it goes up to, like, say, 500, 600, 700 trillion dollars, which are not really backed by anything other than weapons and, you know, so on and so forth. But, like, what does it even matter if you become the richest man in the world and you have, say, $500 million? 500 million, like, it's completely unobtainable, like, it's beyond anyone's comprehension, right? But that person with $500 million can just be fucking crushed in a second. It can all just be taken away. They can be fucking killed easily, you know? There's no real cap. Just the more you have, the more they can take. The more you have, the more you are under control. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't be, you can't even get to that level without there being some type of collateral against you. You know what I'm saying? Or even a much lower level. Like, I mean, most people will be pretty happy to make 10 million, 50 million, some shit like that, right? But they're fucking nothing to somebody that has 100 million, 150 million. Just fucking wipe them out in 2 seconds. Now, on the reverse side, the bottom, you can see the bottom, right? And it's actually a deeper dive than you probably think. To find the absolute minimum that you can live with and thrive with, to have the absolute least amount of anything, you know, it's obtainable, but it's still way harder than you think. It's incredibly fucking difficult to find the bottom also, but you can do it, right? And I could go on and on and on for so long about how and why that makes you stronger and better. You know what I'm saying? To know everything that you can live without, that you don't need. And then when you find that place, it doesn't mean that you have to stay there. It doesn't mean that you have to have nothing, right? It means that nothing can own you, nothing can control you, right? And then everything else beyond that, which will naturally come to you, which will naturally gravitate to you, right, becomes abundance, right? Now let's take some more like realistic figures, right? Let's think about like the person that, say, makes like $250,000 a year, right? And they spend $100,000 a year to do that, right? And we have another person that, say, makes like $4,000 a month, something like that, and they spend only $1,000 to do that each month, right? That person that, you know, is making 4-to-1 is really more secure than the person making 2.5-to-1. You know what I'm saying? That $100,000 overhead is gonna chew his shit up quick. You know what I mean? The guy with the $1,000 overhead, like, you know what I mean? Like, you can pretty much, you know, hustle that up, no problem. He doesn't have a lot of, you know, doesn't take much to make much, right? So, not to say that you shouldn't obtain as much as possible, but you should obtain that with as little effort as possible. You see what I'm saying? Or I shouldn't say you. This is just my own method of going about things. Like, the real, like, what you want, if you want to be free financially, or there's so many other ways, but we're talking about this right now, is passive income. You know what I'm saying? The income that you don't have to really do anything or much for, right? Everything else beyond that, you're spending fucking, you know, 40 hours a week, especially, or even fucking 20 hours a week, kind of a lot. Fucking working for what, something like what most people's jobs, no matter how good they are, no matter how much they're paid, are pretty much meaningless. It's all just a form of control. It's all just a gilded cage, you know? So, you know, and there's nothing to say that you can't do both. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you accept and start moving with the concept of wu wei, of effortless action, which is way, as much as that sounds easy to understand, it goes way deeper, and that's something that can only also be obtained through spirituality in the truest sense, right? The merger of Shiva and Shakti, right? The merger of the masculine and feminine, of the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere of the brain, suddenly you start moving differently, right? And once you embrace that, there's no reason why you can't have it both. There's no reason why you can't have $1,000 of overhead per month, the minimum you need for life, you know, and still be pulling in $250 a year. There's no reason, right? It's just, most people are fucking spinning their wheels, and they're not going anywhere fast. They think they're going somewhere, but they're really just trading out their fucking little chains for bigger chains. You know what I'm saying? They're just fucking getting themselves tied up in something that's unsustainable, that will eventually be taken away through an economic recession or fucking war or fucking, you know, misfortune, whatever. You know what I'm saying? But someone who fucking positions themselves with the back against the wall, you know what I mean? They're ready for anything. And there's no reason why they can't have both. You know what I'm saying? But the difference is, one is slavery and the other is abundance. And this is fucking beautiful thing to understand. And the powers that be that want to keep us working, want to keep us enslaved, our slave masters and their masters, because remember, the one with the whip is a slave too. You know what I'm saying? They just have a nicer quarters, that's all. You know, of course they're gonna paint anyone that is trying to free people or is freeing themselves as a villain, right? And this is actually a fundamental thing which our entire society is built around because, you know, in modern day, our shackles are ones of the mind. You know what I'm saying? It's way worse than the whips and the chains and the shit they used to do, right? People think that that's the worst, and now they're just like, I'm wandering around. But this is actually so much worse because this is a cage that's built around your mind, right? And that cage around your mind, it separates you from the divine. That is the main focus of it, because you can't subjugate a person who is spiritually liberated, right? And so it's actually a far more evil and also effective way of doing things, this fiat currency capitalism fucking bullshit system, right? Because imagine you're in whips and chains and all that. You're definitely focused on God. You're definitely focused on looking within, right? But people who are obsessed with material existence and fucking falling for the fiat fucking slavery system, right? Some of these people will fucking kill for money. That's your soul. They fucking enslaved you all the way to the soul in that case. So who are the real villains? And I'm not just talking about the slavers. I'm talking about the compliers too. You know what I'm saying? Like, ignorance is bliss, but if you know the truth and you continue to fucking co-sign on that shit, you're just as evil as the one fucking cracking the whip. Because you're setting an example for other people. You know what I'm saying? And when you participate in this shit like that, the whole thing is a fucking pyramid scheme. And guess what's at the top of the fucking pyramid scheme? Whatever's most expensive, right? That's what the whole system's built around, is choose your own adventure slavery that works its way up, not just through taxes, but through bonds and inflation and all kinds of other, you know what I'm saying, methods to build the things that cost the most. And what costs the most? War, weapons, fucking AI, all the shit that's fucking enslaving us, that's killing people, that's fucking motivating the most evil atrocities and whatever on the planet, right? And the only thing that makes all that fit within that fucking framework of non-duality, of like there is no good, no evil, this, that, and the other, is karma. So understanding the concept of karma and samsara and the multiple lives and so on and so forth is to understand that there is no escape, that you're gonna pay for everything that you do, whether you're conscious or unconscious of what you're doing, because every action creates karma, right? And it's a zero-sum game. You don't get out until you find that equilibrium. So I hope that was a good answer. It was a great question. I appreciate you, Nectar Strokes. What's up, Dominic? What's up, Chino? Let's see. I'm in Miami. JD Min, good to see you. YouTuber Max says, what's the most gluttonous food episode you ever had? I don't even know. Did a lot. I did a lot. I've consumed horrible things, okay? I'm not proud of it, but I try to fast as much as possible to make up for it. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. I've done my gluttony for sure. Let's see. Mihaela says, I've done a 10 days Vipassana silent meditation program. I'm curious if you have experienced that. I have not. I've never done Vipassana. I definitely have spent a lot of time in silence, but it was always self-imposed. I do, though, I will go far as to say I left this out earlier, and it was like, you know, huge mistake in doing that. But back to what I was saying earlier, as far as like powerful tools to, you know, regarding Tony's question, for like, I don't know why I didn't say this earlier, but I mentioned fasting, which is a powerful tool, of course. But even beyond that, the most powerful tool of all for obtaining the highest spiritual gains is silence. Preferably silence. And if you want to go a step further beyond silence, because I know you just mentioned a program and a retreat, and that's awesome. It's great if you can go and be around other people and vibrate, especially if those people are already like super advanced. You know, you become silent, maybe you're fasting, and suddenly, you know what I'm saying, and you're around people who have, you know, done their inner work, and there is a certain, you know, resonance that happens between people, right? There tends to be like frequency of aura and things like that tends to like to find equilibrium, right? So if you get around some people that are like, you know, dialed, it helps you get dialed too. But I'll go a step further and say that the most powerful is silence and solitude. You go find yourself a place where there ain't another fucking soul around, there ain't nothing but nature, and you find yourself quiet. You want to fucking compound that into even crazier gains fast at the same time. Purge everything from yourself that is not yourself. You know, they say you are what you eat, so eat the self, right? You can't miss with that. You can't miss with that. Even if you're a completely non-spiritual person, you just want to be like, and you just think I'm an asshole, right? That's over here yapping on about fucking non-material life and this, that, and the other. And you want to prove me wrong. You go to take your ass to the forest, swamp, whatever you want to do, the beach. Get away from some people. Skip some meals. No water, no nothing. I'm not a medical professional. Nothing says I'm going to health advice. And you don't say a fucking word for about 10 days or even longer. You come back and tell me if I was right or wrong. Okay? So whoever wants to prove me wrong, go do that. Go do that and tell me nothing happened for you. That you didn't have no gains, you didn't have no change of perspective. So yeah, do that. I'd love to hear about how that affected you, Mihaela. Let's see, Max says, when you step into a regular church, can you appreciate what's going on there? Do you feel any connection there? Or do you feel a sense of alienation or estrangement? You know, I haven't been to a regular church in a while. I'm not gonna lie, like, of all, you know, I do tend to, like, I sometimes go to some temples, and, you know, I do like to interact. Like, I collect a wide range of spiritual friends, and these even include like hardcore Christians, but, you know, more mystical ones that have attained some whatever, which I find are few and far between. But I haven't gone to really many Christian churches. Not to say that I don't think that I do think that there is something about being around people that are focused on God and devout, but I do find that particular dogmatic religion to be one of the most frustrating ones to interact with, and to be probably the most farthest off from the mark. So I haven't really experimented much with that, but it is something I've thought about doing. You know, but In general, I would say, yeah. I mean, I could see it being positive. And I could also see the possibility for alienation and estrangement. It really just depends. I can't really speak from experience in that regard, but you know, I've gone to a lot of other types of religions. I've gone to other religions, temples and things, and felt very well included. In fact, I had some amazing things happen. You know, the very first time that I went to like an ISKCON temple, you know, and you know, because of that, I am somewhat partial and biased towards that organization, as far as if I am feeling like I want to go and be around spiritual people and stuff. And you know, I like to chant and all that stuff, and you know, Prashad's cool. But I haven't really tried it at like a Christian church, so I can't really speak from it. I could imagine it going either way. I have a lot of Christian friends, and most of my Christian friends, you know, there's a connection, regardless of the fact that I disagree with with most of what they believe. Let's see. Noy says, I always hear people say that we won't be afraid of losing if we understand that everything we have is not ours, but we will still feel sad when we lose something. How can we face it if we know the reality? People will change when they go through something in life. That's true. I mean, what you said is absolutely true. Like, nothing is ours other than this body. And even that, you know, it's temporary. You know what I'm saying? So really the only thing that you really have is your soul. You know what I'm saying? Like, we should all be focused on that which we can take with us beyond this body, right? Beyond this dimension. You know what I'm saying? That we can take with us to the next body, right? But I wouldn't say that we still feel sad when we lose something. Most people do. But like for me, like, you know, I have found like what the Buddhists called, I think it's upaya, right? Which is skilled teaching, I think it means, or you can also look at it as like, I look at it kind of like incorrect teaching, like, or, you know, a method in which teaches something but is not the best method. And for me, that was gambling. You know what I'm saying? When I say gambling, I mean both the casino and the stock market. I did a lot of gambling, right? And that's how I really became detached to the concept of loss and gain, right? Because the only true difference between loss and gain is time, right? The house always wins, right? So how does the house always win? Like 2-point-whatever% edge, or, you know, depending what you're playing, you know, over the course of infinity, that's how much they make. They make the edge. So whatever gets pumped through that table, they make the edge over the course of infinity. But we're not going to be there for infinity. We're going to be there for a few hours, maybe a few days, whatever. It depends how fucking turned out you are, right? And so what's the actual factor here? It's time. So what do we do if we want to be a winning gambler? Well, we stretch time. We lower our standard of deviation. And this is also what we do with attachment. right? We lower our standard of deviation, right? Without detachment, if all desire leads to suffering, right, then every good experience, which is temporary, is going to have an equal negative experience, right? So the higher the high, the lower the low. So if we lower our standard of deviation, we come up with stability, right? And since we're not going to be here forever, at least in this form, right, then once again, time becomes the factor. You know what I'm saying? We squish time, shit gets crazy. Stretch time, we have a sure outcome, right? So even in life, the house is always going to win if you look at the house as, you know, the expiration of your physical vessel at this moment, right? And so it's really all just comes down to understanding, right? And that's why understanding is the frequency of the crown chakra. That's the highest, you know, the highest goal is to understand, right? So it's all just a journey. It's a process. We all walk in our own ways. But, you know, go to the casino. It'll teach you real quick. And thank you so much for the donation, Noi. I appreciate you. Thank you, Jacob. I grew it myself regarding the killarness of my eyebrow. Nectar Stroke says these are great discussion topics. I'm happy you're enjoying it. We did skip last week. Sorry, you guys. By the way, last week I was not online because the universe did not want me online. My phone froze and wouldn't turn off. So and it wouldn't let me type in my password. I was just locked out of it. It was just like, no, not today. So that day we did not. And here we are. Beautiful Miami, Florida. What's going on, Kimberly in Charlottesville, Virginia? Good to see you. Max says, what do you say to the man that says you must be the happiest man in the world due to the career you have? I would say that there's more to life than sex and money. But that I probably am not the happiest man in the whole world, but I am liberated. I am free and without suffering. And, you know, I enjoyed my career, and in most cases in the past, and definitely all cases within the future, you know, the key there is not the specific act in which I performed, right, nor the amount in which I received. You know, the truest factor there that made me happy, or more importantly, free, right? The most liberating factor, which declassified me as a slave to some extent, was the fact that whatever I was being paid for was things that I wanted to do, things that I would have gladly done for free. Perhaps I would not have done them for free in the setting that I was in, or maybe I would have let anyone view me do those things, right? I certainly would not have posted those things on the internet, but I did enjoy them and I would have done them for free. Therefore, I was essentially being paid for what I love. And so being paid for what I love is the most important factor regarding that statement as far as why my career led to some, you know, created some type of prosperity which made me happy, some type of abundance, right? So it doesn't really matter what you do if it was something that you would do for free. So if you can figure out any way to survive, be that from receiving money or be that from some other method of providing air, food, water, and shelter for yourself by doing something that you enjoy doing, that you want to do, then you have freed yourself physically, your physical self. You've exited the matrix. All right, that's the exit from the matrix. Now, it doesn't mean that you've achieved spiritual liberation, because spiritual liberation is the absence of fear, right? The absence of fear of death, more specifically, right? And that only comes through acceptance of death, right? And, you know, the knowledge that you existed before this body and that you will continue to exist after this body. But the only way to gain that knowledge in a way that is not rooted in belief, but rather into knowing, right, is through what like the Hindu call moksha, release from karma, release from samsara, right? So there is that. Let's see, what else we got here? Ali Khan says, AI is taking jobs. Most of the new jobs they had listed was mainly for healthcare. Yeah, I mean, AI is taking my job soon, sadly. Well, you know, make a new job out of AI. I mean, I don't know what to say. The AI thing is coming on quick. And, you know, it's probably, I don't think I'm supposed to talk about this on here, so I'm gonna be real vague, but let's just keep it real, okay? Most of the people that are on this planet are here to work. That's why they're allowed to be here. And AI has been around long before we personally, the people, got access to it. And what most people don't realize is that by using this AI, these little applications, asking questions, getting, you know what I'm saying, it's learning everything about you, that combined with all your habits and what you watch and this, that, and the other, the reels, your swipes, your pause times, everything on your phone, shit fucking taking photos of you all the time. It knows if you're happy, it knows if you're sad, it knows whatever, it knows your greed, it knows your lust, it knows all your shit, right? And so unconsciously, you are uploading yourself into the machine, right? And as a whole, we are creating the personality of the master AI, right? And the powers that be had this technology a long time ago, and they knew that this has always been part of the plan. This also has, you know, some pretty negative implications regarding the whole timing of the pandemic and other aspects that had to do with the pandemic, so on and so forth. I'll let you fill the gaps there. If you can't figure it out, like, sorry. But yeah, shit's happening. Things are changing. Population is in decline. AI is picking up the slack where humans left off, and that's true. I don't know if there's a question involved with that, but that's my statement regarding that. So, best thing we can do is everything else that we talked about in the stream. You know what I'm saying? Liberate yourself, free yourself, detach from the machine, get out of the matrix, find God, find liberation from suffering, find liberation from death, from fear, from greed, from lust. You know what I'm saying? From lies, you know? Try to see through the matrix, right? Figure out what you really need and what you don't. Put your back against the wall. Figure out what you love. That's all I have to say to anyone on any level. AI or no AI. But if you don't do it, the decision is going to be made for you anyways. So, you know, it's your call. Let's see, I'm skipping past some of this stuff. Let's see. Send your sister my love. Ekaterina Mauka. Let's see. Michaela says, does enlightenment resolve karma or simply transcend it? I think both, to be honest. I don't know. I think there's I think there's another stage. I think there's something more than what I've held on to. I'm not gonna say more than what I've tasted, but I think there's something more than what I have been able to hold on to, which could be contributed as enlightenment. I think that resolving karma or release from samsara can actually come before that. So it's they naturally go hand in hand in some way, right? Because as soon as you see the truth, you're right. As soon as you see the truth, as soon as you have unconditional love, right? The natural next step is to transcend karma, right? So because it becomes both the logical and the intuitive thing to do, right? And I suppose somewhere along that way you figure out what your purpose is, right? And then it transcends into dharma, right? And so when it comes to dharma and you have no fear of death, right? You have no attachment, right? And you suddenly have a very clear image, both intuitively and logically. You've merged these two concepts within yourself that you can use them seamlessly to think about things rather than only your logical brain, which most people use. The natural next step is into your dharma, right? Your life's purpose, which you finally will understand at that moment. So Ekaterina says, what do I value in girls? Divinity, right? Be that consciously or unconsciously. Not everyone can see it within themselves. Many people, in general, not just women, but they have divine attributes without realizing it because they are looking at things through a worldly scope. But when the embodiment is there, that is when the embodiment of the divine exists within a woman on any level. That is when she shines the brightest. That is when she's the most attractive. That is when she's in her most purest and most feminine element. And that is something that should be cherished by all. It's the most beautiful thing. Right? It's my favorite thing. And so I would say that the thing which I value the most in girls is divinity. Let's see. Mia Kuminha says, is there anything you are not allowed to eat due to spiritual reasons, like outside dry fasting? Allowed? It's a difficult question. It really depends on, which path you're on. If you're on the right-hand path, as we discussed earlier, the path of the renunciate, yeah, totally. Anything that required violence to obtain is pretty much a no-no there, right? But if you're on the path of embodiment, right, it gets a little bit more vague, because now we're stepping into the realm of non-duality, right? And I think we can all agree that it's wrong to commit violence in order to sustain yourself, if it's possible to sustain yourself without violence, right? And the real issue there, when we're talking about spiritual reasons, right, is karma, as we've mentioned previously, right? And so karma is the factor, right? It's your action creates, reactions. It has, karmic implications, right? But on the path of embodiment, what are we trying to embody? Well, we're trying to become a vessel for God. We're trying to embody God, right? Which created the situation in which sometimes things eat other things, right? And on that path of embodiment, right, one must accept the karma, right? One must accept that when you eat something, that you have already sealed your fate of experiencing that thing's life. You know what I'm saying? Depending how you want to look at it. Some people look at it like, oh, I'm going to come back as a cow if I eat a cow, which is a fair enough way of looking at it. But it's actually different than that. In fact, it's the way I look at, okay, let me rephrase this. The way I look at it is more quantum than that. Is that in the same time that, in the same single thought of God, which is this entire universe, or should I say single thought of Earth, which is, simply a little thought within the mind of the universe, right? Everything existed at once, right? Like we view time as this linear thing, but it's not. It's something that is experienced in a linear fashion, but which all happens simultaneously within the multiverse, right? And so at the moment of our death, right, we get to experience those karmas before we reincarnate, right? And so it's not that you'll come back as a cow and have a totally different life than the one that you ate. It's that you will actually experience that thing which you tied yourself in karma, this exact life in absolution, because it's like a thing, something that's more like a recording or something. It's something that happened, right? And the moment that you interact with something in some kind of meaningful way, like for example, eating it because it died for you, you tie yourself to it in a way that you will, on a quantum level, experience its entire life in absolute detail through the first person experience, right? And so people on the renunciate path that want to escape karma by not creating more karma, they stop doing things, right? People on the embodiment path, right? They're trying to embody what? They're trying to embody God, right? They're trying to become a vessel for God. And God created everything and everything, including ourselves, for its own experience. So all karma is God's karma. You see what I'm saying? All suffering is God's suffering. So when you eat something, you eat God, right? If you're trying to embody God, then you accept that experience that you're going to have. It most likely is going to be fucking horrific if you're eating things that were enslaved their entire life and had fucking lived in fear and all this, and suffering from the moment that they were fucking born to the moment that you ate them, right? And so that's the left-hand path, right? So there's two ways to go about it. Now there's also the middle hand path, and I'm not going to get into all that, but you know what I'm saying, to take the left hand path, you accept your karma, you accept the experience of all things that happen even within the entire world, that you are going to experience every single thing that ever fucking happened. And trust and fucking believe, if you got time to be on your phone right now, on the internet, you have no concept of how horrible things can be. But for both humans and animals and everything in between. Right? But, you know, if you want to take the clean path, then you renounce violence and things which create suffering, not only for other creatures, but for God, who experiences all suffering. So I hope that answered your question. It was a great question. Thank you so much, Mahuninha. Ali Khan says, chase nirvana and then you will get enlightenment. I probably would disagree with that statement. I do think that it's a fairly understandable thought, but that which you chase runs from you, right? You can get very far spiritually by chasing enlightenment. You know what I'm saying? It's a great motivator to take you a substantial part of the way. But in that case where you've dedicated your entire life to spirituality and chasing this enlightenment, and you eventually come to the realization that the final boss of enlightenment is to release the desire for it, the suffering, that your final bonds, your final bondage is to release even attachment to spirituality, even attachment to seeking enlightenment, right? Or the desire for enlightenment, right? And that's the big boss. Because if you've ever tasted even just a little bit of the divine, it's to ever not think of it for even a single moment is the hardest thing that you could ever accomplish, right? But it is a good thought, and I'm happy for the comment, because I think that what I just mentioned is something that may become valuable someday for the people in this room. Tell Maria I said hi. Katerina. Ali Khan says, key practices include non-attachment, mindfulness, and present moment, compassion, and letting go of ego to achieve a state of inner peace and liberation. I agree with all that, absolutely. Bubnak says, finding the right people requires a little browsing. That's true. But of all things in this world which have value, your connection with other people is one of the greatest. And so if you even have one person which you can consider wholeheartedly, you know what I'm saying, devoid of ulterior motives even, then you have, other than, you know what I'm saying, if you can find one person that's truly, truly what we could consider a friend, where their only motivation is to help you rise, then that one thing is more valuable than any amount of money, any possessions, anything. That is what it's, you know, that's one of the greatest values, one of the great treasures of life. So cherish those people. Jesus, did you just walk out of a cave? Well, I gotta be in a cave, bro. I'm chilling. You crazy as hell. Oh, sorry, I'm reading the blocked comments real quick. How many saber-tooths did you take down this season? That's so funny. When did they bring back the caveman commercials? Well, you know, insurance is getting expensive, Joker Parker. I think we all want to save a little bit on our insurance, so hit me in the DMs and let's see. Sorry, off track. Let me see. Mihaela Bobak says, the biggest shift for me during the Vipassana was seeing how automatic the mind really is. Sitting in silence that long makes you realize how much craving and aversion run everything once you see it clearly. Oh, that's great. Mihaela says, there's a little more spa pace between experience and reaction. Yes, that's amazing. Brave, good to see you. I'm happy you made it. Man, there's not that many trolls today, honestly, for having a fully open chat. And the ones that we did get are like, you know, with the exception of Sabretooth guy, like pretty unoriginal, to be honest. So I think we're burning them out. We're wearing them out. They're getting tired. Noise doing a good job. Slowly but surely, like, they're running out of juice. Mihaela says, it didn't feel like escaping life, more like understanding the machinery of the mind better. Do you think silence reveals these patterns naturally, or does it take a structured practice like Vipassana? I don't really know that much about Vipassana, to be honest. You know, I've not really studied that much yoga or ever had like a classical teacher of any sort. Like, I just chanted the Om one day and something happened and we were off to the races. I don't know. But yeah, you know, it's interesting how automatic the machinery of the mind is. You know what I'm saying? Like, one way to, you know, you can raise your hand, move your hand, you know what I'm saying? You can do the same thing with your foot, your head, whatever. But tell your mind to be quiet. It don't listen. So that's how we know that it's just some kind of automatic thing, kind of like your heartbeat or whatever, right? But an interesting trick is to try and predict what you're going to think next. Like, okay, observe your thoughts. I got some shit going through my head. Okay, that's interesting. That's weird. That's kind of like sick. Oh, fuck, why did I think that? This, that. Oh, let me try not to think about that. Oh, I thought about it more, right? But then you go, but what am I going to think of next? Suddenly there's silence. You have no fucking clue what you're going to think next. So, you know, what do we learn from that? We learn that, yes, it's automatic. And two, it doesn't really know shit. It doesn't even know what it's going to think next. It's just fucking, you know, dog chasing its own tail. So, but yeah, silence, I mean, there's levels to silence. You know what I'm saying? 10 days, something will happen in 10 days. But, you know, there's 365 days in a year. Who knows what happens if we spend a whole year in silence? I don't. I've never made it that long. But is that brow AI? No, it's real. Grew it myself. Let's see. You guys, I kind of got to pee, so I might have to go. Do I fear death? I do not fear death, in fact. That is not the case. Mihaela says, interesting. You say you value divinity is the most beautiful thing. I'm curious, what does it look like to you in real life? Or how often do you actually recognize it when it's right in front of you, or what signals tell you that you're in its presence? It's a good question. I'm going to meditate on that later. Thank you for that, Mihaela. I would say it's at this moment when I kind of got to use the restroom, and I think I'm going to log off pretty soon. Just as a short answer, I would say it's kind of an intuitive thing, but it's the lack of self-serving motivation is one of the clearest signals. When somebody's biggest motivation is the betterment of others rather than the betterment of themselves, that is one of the clearest signs of divinity. That's like a short answer, but I'm gonna meditate on that, and I'm gonna ask myself that question later. So I really appreciate you, Mihaela. You've been an amazing contributor to this conversation. I hope that you will turn on the bell and try to be part of our future streams as well. It's been great. Arteminus, good to see you. What's up, Austin? Good to see you, buddy. Love you, bro. Arteminus has drawn some connections. Okay, you guys listen, I don't know, oh, we almost pretty much, Austin's in on the saber-toothed tiger thing. Let's see, are you the feral kid from the movies? Okay, on that note, you guys, I made it to the bottom of the chat. I love you all very much. I hope that this was a good stream. If you could do me a favor, if anyone remembers what we talked about in the stream, and you could go into the comments after I close out of here and throw some tags or whatever, keywords, to remind me, that would be great. But I'm gonna go ahead and log off. I love you guys all very much. I will see you next Sunday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you're not already following me on Instagram and you have Instagram, follow me there. And I also have a Telegram group, which I'd love to have you guys on too. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell, because we might have some random streams this week outside of Sunday, but they will be unadvertised, and the only way to know that they're going on will be through getting a notification on YouTube app. And yes, feel free to DM me in private on either Telegram or Instagram, though I will admittedly say I've been more in tune or more in touch with checking my DMs on Instagram than Telegram lately, but that can always change. So much love, everybody. I'll see you soon. Adios.